let's talk about fat frets for a minute. I've mentioned several times that I do not like fat frets. So let's talk about why I don't like fat frets. All right, my definition of a fat fret, a wide fret. These are wide frets on this guitar. And this is a normal fret. This fret, this normal one, is Evo wire. It measures 80 thousandths of an inch wide. And this one is probably about 100 thousandths of an inch, and 95. It's 99, so that's 100 thousandths of an inch wide, whereas this is 80. Okay? So 20%, right? The main reason I don't like wide frets, they probably came about through Les Pauls or something, you know? Les Pauls typically have wide frets, but the main reason I don't like them is because of the surface that they create for fretting the string. When the string contacts that fret, it's got a wide surface like this to contact. That's fine as long as it has a perfect crown on it and the string touches that perfect crown. But if that's the case, then why do you even have a wide fret? Because you're supposed to be contacting that crown right at the crown, and that's it. So what's the purpose for the rest of the fret? Now the problem is when the frets get a little bit worn and that crown goes away, and now you have a fret top that's like this, that's wide. The string will slide on it. It doesn't get a very good bite, and it also moves the intonation point to this side of the fret. Since it's no longer contacting up here on the crown, the intonation point moves over here, and you end up with sharpness. Especially on this 1970s D41, it's a 70s. 70s tend to be sharp to begin with, and that's a lot of what I do with them is correct the intonation. So you compound the air on there. And you take mandolin, for instance. Mandolins have very short scales, and the closer you get farther down the fingerboard, same with the guitar, but the farther down the fingerboard you get, the closer together the frets get, and the more compound that sharpness becomes. Instead of fretting right here on the crown of the fret on each one of them where it's supposed to be, you're fretting on the forward edge of it, and it gets more and more forward as you go down the neck. So it gets more and more sharper, slightly, but I don't like them for that reason. So let me show you what I'm talking about here. Let's see if we can get this on camera. This is going to be tricky, I think, to photograph, but let's give it a crack. Just being tricky has never stopped me. So we're going to move in like this with the GoPro. We get as close as I can right here on this fret. I've got a razor blade right here, and I want you to watch the shadow as the razor blade comes down here. Let's get this up here where I can see that shadow. You see the shadow coming onto the fret? And when that fret contacts, that is a relatively wide contact surface. Look at the shadow. Okay, and these frets are in good condition, relatively speaking. Let's watch that shadow come down. You want to watch the shadow right here as it comes in. And you can see that wide surface right there. Let's come up. Let's get some different angles on this. There you go. See that shadow? It's a fairly wide contact. Now, and again, these frets are in very good condition, so it's less noticeable here. But this razor blade slides back and forth like this and makes an ugly scraping noise. And there you can see the shadow I'm talking about, right up in front of my thumb. It's fairly wide. So let's go over here and let's look at this one, which is an Evo fret that is not pressed all the way in here. It's just sitting here for demonstration purposes because I still got some work to do to the fingerboard. And watch this shadow. See how precise that is right there? It's a much, much smaller shadow. That shadow is the string. This razor blade would be the string. So as you bent this around there, you would get a much better bite over this narrow contact point than you will over here. You have a wide contact point and you won't get much bite. Now I will say that that kind of fret is a little bit nicer when you're bending a lot, which is probably why they're used in Les Pauls. because a Les Paul is kind of a bendy guitar, especially, you know, shot a shorter scale, and you know, they're not as bad over there, but I still just like regular 80 thousandths of an inch frets, even on a Les Paul. I could tolerate them there, but I would prefer that they be like a Fender. Okay, so I've demonstrated to you the shadow principle and how you can see that your string is going to do the same thing. It's going to be harder for your string to get a good bite on there, and it's going to make a nasty fretting sound because it's going to buzz on a microscopic level. You got to really think about the magic school bus here. You know, when you have a big curve like this, the string is going to tend to vibrate and buzz right on the edge. As it leaves the crown like this, it's going to tend to buzz just a little bit right there where it contacts the front of that fret. So to me, big frets are dirtier sounding. I would not have a problem with going with even a thinner fret on this because they make a 78. So this is 80. Some of them are 78. I can go even thinner at a 50 thousandths of an inch, which is getting a little thin. Now, back in the day, when you had nickel silver frets, and that's all we had, a thinner fret would wear out quite a bit faster. You know, so you had that issue, especially on mandolins, where you have a thin string anyways, and it's biting into a thin fret, and those thin frets would wear out faster. But if it wears out on a wide fret, like I said, you're going to sink down into you're going to pass the crown of the fret, and you're going to be into the fat part of the fret, and there goes your intonation, and there goes your fretting precision right out the door. Okay? Now, there's one other thing, especially on mandolins and especially on guitars up the neck. The space in between here is just a little bit thinner because remember, this is 20 thousandths of an inch wider. So if you take 10 thousandths of an inch here and 10 thousandths of an inch here, the space in between the fret is 20 thousandths of an inch less, which is, you know, 20%. It's a little bit harder to get fat, stubby fingers in here, and especially on mandolin where you're talking about this kind of space from the get-go, and then as you go up the neck, the spaces get even tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter, and it's very difficult to play, for me, to play up the neck on a mandolin with fat frets. My fat fingers and fat frets just do not get along. It's hard to press down on there to get a clean note. There's just that little bit of extra less room on there. And a mandolin fret's going to be thinner than this. My mandolin frets are 47 thousandths of an inch. So I have seen people put this fret on a guitar, this fret on a mandolin, and man, you get up here on the neck and it's just like a solid sheet of frets, you know. So that extra space is even more exaggerated on mandolins up the neck. But even on guitar up in this area here, this space is chewed up just a little bit more, and it makes it just a little harder to get down in there and get a clean note because you can't make the fret bite over here. You got just a little bit less room in there. Okay, it's subtle, but it's there. So that's two main reasons why I don't like big frets. I also just don't like the way they look, you know. Especially, I don't like the way they look because I don't like them. And so when I see big frets, I'm like, ugh. You know, I don't like the way they look because I don't like the way they behave. It's not that I just inherently don't like the way they look, but it just looks so much cleaner to me to have a thinner fret on there. So on this D41, I'm refretting it. These frets are in okay shape. Let's measure one up here again, see how much crown. I think they're a little low. So I'm going to measure it with my little tool here. I'm going to measure this crown. 38 thousandths of an inch. That's not bad, you know. That's a pretty fair height fret. So the height was good on these. The crown was decent, but the owner said he wants me to treat it like it was mine, and when it's mine, I get rid of the wider frets. I've done this on my own personal guitars. Huss and Dalton used to use wide frets. I'm not sure if they still do. And man, I had a gorgeous Huss and Dalton, a TDM. There was a NAM model. It was a sunburst one. It was just a terrific guitar, and I could not make that thing play clean. The note, it just dirty sounding, wasn't clean. Had big frets. I replaced them with narrow Evo. It just transformed that guitar for me. It played better, sounded better, cleaner sounding, fretted cleaner. So it was the way to go. So, and same thing with mandolins. I've had mandolins come in with wide frets. I don't like them. Replace them. There is a tone difference, especially in mandolins. Bigger frets like this seem to me to sound a little deeper and a little tubbier and a little bit more muddy. I've refretted maybe four or five of my personal mandolins. One of them came in with thin frets, and at the time I was influenced by big frets because that's what you read about, and real mandolins have big frets. Never mind the fact that the Lloyd Loar doesn't. But I had a guy look at my mandolin one time. It was a Summit mandolin, which is a pretty good mandolin. He didn't recognize the brand. He said, yeah, the inexpensive mandolins tend to have thin frets. So I just felt horrible, I've got to have big frets on it. And let me grab that. So I had to have big frets on it. So I had it refretted with big frets. And it didn't sound good. I didn't like it. It sounded tubby. And it went from a crisp, bright, snappy mandolin to a little bit tubby. And later on, when I started working on instruments myself, I refretted it back to thin wire and boom. And then after that, probably my next 4 mandolins had big frets when they came, and I immediately refretted them with thinner wire, especially once I got thin stainless steel and thin Evo. But even before that, I used to take guitar wire, which is 80 thousandths of an inch, and run it over here on the belt sander, hold it down like that, thin those things down to about 50 thousandths of an inch. I like the tall frets. I like the height on them, but I like them thin. So I like thin, tall frets. Not super tall, but I want them at 40 thousandths of an inch. And at the time, there was no mandolin wire made like that, so I created my own by sanding down guitar wire. These days, I have Evo, and I have some that's, I think, 50 thousandths of an inch wide and 37 tall, and that's perfect, man. I love that on mandolin. On this guitar, we're going to go with the standard Evo wire of 80 thousandths of an inch wide, 43 thousandths of an inch tall. Fabulous wire. It gives me clean fretting, it lasts forever, and that's what we're going to do on this one. So that's why I do not like wide frets. And to me, a fret is wide when it's past 80 thousandths of an inch. So you got fret wire that's 90 thousandths of an inch and 100 thousandths of an inch. I don't like it. The only place I would like it would be possibly on an electric guitar, where it does help a little bit with the bending, precisely because it's not as grippy when you fret it. So precisely because you're going to fret it and bend it, and that little extra width right there helps your bends slide a little bit more. So like Stevie Ray Vaughan used to use the biggest wire he could, but that's because back then you didn't have Evo and you didn't have stainless steel, and so you used that big wire to keep it from wearing out overnight, But even then, you really needed to recrown that wire pretty frequently, or replace it pretty frequently, because once the crown's gone, and that's it, you've got sloppy intonation. Now, you also have to think about the kind of style you're playing in here. And so if you're doing an electric guitar where you're doing a lot of bending, you are creating your own intonation, basically. And when you get to a taller wire on an electric guitar, you're going to be careful not to bend it, not to press too hard, or you'll take it out of tune. But on a distorted electric guitar, the intonation is not quite as important as it is, not quite as noticeable as it is when you're playing, say, mandolin up the neck. So, it's noticeable. I mean, you need to be in tune. But in the blues, you're immediately going to vibrate, or you're going to bend, or you're going to have a distortion on there. You want a little bit of out of tuneness in order to create that dissonance and tension. So it's a different ball game on an electric guitar, distorted electric guitar, than it is on pure acoustic tone. Okay? That's why I don't like wide fret wire, and that's why I'm replacing it on this guitar. So, see you later.